Councillor Parkin, who's joining the meeting today, understanding order 14.1. Councillor Parkin can take part in the discussion of the meeting but may not vote. And would ask that we could please start the live stream. Cool. Tēnā koutou katoa, nau mai ki te hui o te komiti arataki Māhere o Rohi. Welcome along to the District Plan Review Committee. And nau mai haere mai to Richard, who is joining us today as well. We've done the opening formalities on the screen, so we'll bring up the karakia. Mea karakia tātou. Tēnei o, te haukai nei o taku tapawai. Ko te haukai nuku, ko te haukai rangi. Ko te haukai a tau tupuna a tāne nui a rangi. Ka piki ti ai ki ngā rangi tūhaha. Ki te tiho o mā nono. Ka roko hino atu rā ko I o mātua kore anaki. Ka tikinga mai ngā kiti o te wānanga. Ko te kiti tuauri, ko te kiti tuatia, ko te kiti aranui. Ka tiri a ka pōpoa, ka pute mai ho, ko te I rā tangata, ki te whaio, ki te amarama, tihei mauri ora. Apologies, we have received apologies from Mayor Barry and noting Councillor Edwards is online. So I'll move the motion, the apologies be accepted. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Lewis. All those in favour, please say aye. All against? Declare that carried. Moving on to item number 3, public comment. We don't have any members of the public wishing to join us today. We'll move on to item number 4, conflict of interest declarations. Any members have any conflicts they wish to make? Richard?
Yes, Mr. Chair, not necessarily a conflict, but just as a matter of interest, I have been involved in the writing of the Te Ao Māori chapters for the district plan.
Kia ora, thank you for your mahi and thanks for declaring that. I don't see it as being an issue being able to take part. You'll be the expert when we get to that part of the meeting. Any other conflicts? No, great. Cool, we'll move on then to the first item, which is page 8 of our agenda. The recommendations to Kaunihira o Te Awa Kairangi Council on the 10th of December, the draft Sustainable Growth Strategy 2025 to 55 for community engagement. I'd like to ask Lucy, Head of Urban Development, to speak to the item. Kia ora, Lucy.
Kia ora, councillors and Mr. Chair. So we visited you in July with a preliminary document, and since then we've improved it and engaged further with mana whenua, and we've prettified it and corrected some mistakes, although a few still remain. And now we're at the stage of seeking your approval to move on to community engagement, starting in February and running for 8 weeks alongside the district plan.
Kia ora, he patai tu ngā mema. Any questions from any members? Deputy Mayor Lewis, then Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. Lucy, thank you. When you say running alongside, will they be released at the same time as 2 separate documents or as one package?
We will release 2 documents together, and we're working together to coordinate all our communications. If we run events, if we go and present to community boards or other groups, we'll be working together so that we go once, ideally.
Cool. Councillor Mitchell and Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a bunch of smaller things which I'm happy to just email through afterwards. Just a comment and a question. The comment, when I was reading the challenges and opportunities section, there's a lot of bullet pointed items in there. A couple of things caught my eye and just made me kind of think about the order of the bullet points there. And I don't know if you have time to have a look and a think about those. But as an example, in the transport section, we know transport to be our main source of carbon emissions. So when you look at it through the climate lens, that's really important. It's the last bullet point on there, which is actually fine. And then what caught my eye over the page was that the climate stuff is the first bullet point for business and economy. And when we hear from Chamber of Commerce at long-term plan time, climate is not usually the first thing they talk to about us as one of their concerns. So yeah, just a few little things in there that I thought if you have time to kind of just review the order of those bullet points there, and I think they kind of suggest a bit of an order of priority or something like that. The question I have is on page 50, and there's a map there of think we're in the greener and healthier city section. And the map includes green spaces, which are the dark green areas. And there's a lot of light green areas, which are also green. So I just wondered, when it says in the key green spaces, is it really talking about public green spaces, and whether, if that is the case, if that should just be made a bit more clear? I kind of assume that to be the case, but
You're quite right, and we
Yeah.
should change the wording.
thank you.
Cool. Councillor Parkin.
Kia ora. Thank you for the work on this. From a graphic design point of view, I'm really liking where this is going. Mine's a more technical question about the maps. For example, on page 38, we currently have Alistown incorporated in the areas that we're wanting to increase densification. But from my memory of the overlays in terms of risk and hazard, Alistown's actually, if anything, at more risk of flooding and due to sea level rise than parts of Petone are. And I'm just wondering, what have we got incorporated into our defensive mechanisms into our long-term plan to make Alistown safer if we're encouraging building?
That's a very good point, and I've been wondering about this myself, whether we should include Alistown under the coastal and low-lying areas rather than central and northern valley floor. My understanding is that even if we, with Cross Valley Link and Cross Valley connections, we wouldn't be able to prevent flooding because the water kind of percolates and comes through the ground. So if everybody's supportive, I'm happy to make that change.
Yeah, it was something that came up through Plan Change 43, where Alistown was carved out because just the water infrastructure and low level was just not suitable then. Obviously, Plan Change 56 has superseded all that anyway, but that was more out of our hands, whereas this is probably more in our hands. That said, it's still walkable to a train station. It's still allowed 6 stories. It's still within that zone, within our district plan. So, but in terms of where we want to target our focus and partnerships with Kāinga Ora, as it's mentioned in there, is probably not Alistown, would be my gut feeling. Any other members got any thoughts on this one? Kind of happy, this kind of, happy to kind of bounce around thoughts as well as questions, rather than leaving it all for debate. Councillor Shaw.
Just a comment, really. I just want to say well done on the production of this document. I think it's really clear for our residents to read. It's an easy read. And it gives them a really great understanding. I just want to thank Councillor Mitchell for his attention to detail, because he does pick up an awful lot of stuff that we miss, and it just enhances the whole document. So thank you for that. I think it's great work.
Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, kia ora, great work. I'd probably agree with Councillor Parkin with the Alistown piece, maybe, just so it's more transparent potentially.
Yep.
A question on that subject, thank you. With our district plan, it does provide, in the areas of that we know there are hazards and we know it's a coastal area, the building standards apply to bring things up. So that would be the same for Alistown anyway? Or are you saying, is the suggestion to move the line on the map altogether and follow the river up and then separate it out altogether? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, the second.
Okay, but the rules would still apply to this area?
It wouldn't change the district plan for now, but it might set a direction for in the future that we change the regime.
Cool. Any other thoughts on the Alistown stuff or any other questions in the document? I had some on page 75, just the cycleway connections. Obviously, some things have changed probably since this was even designed, with the committing to tighter and Avalon cycleways now within our long-term plan that we're pushing on with. They're not reflected in the maps. Also, the Melling to Petone section, I don't think is also included in current and committed cycleways, the one alongside State Highway 2. that red line probably needs to be green. So maybe just if we could pass this by the transport team, because there have been some changes made even within the last couple of weeks that probably aren't reflected here. And likewise with Knights Road or Waterloo, obviously there's some changes happening there as well. Whereas at the moment it just says there's no primary roads without cycleways. So yeah, maybe just get some more input on this before it goes out the door. Any other questions or feedback? No, easy. Cool. I'll bring up the recommendations. Do we need to bring them up? No, got them in front of us. So I'd like to move that the committee recommends that council approves the draft Sustainable Growth Strategy 2025 to 55 attached as Appendix 1. Notes that subject to the approval of this document, community engagement will take place in February and March next year alongside our district plan, and notes that the adoption of the Sustainable Growth Strategy by council is planned for May 2025. Mawai Tautaku. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Morgan. Is there any debate? Great, cool. I'd just like to thank officers. Obviously, it's been to us a few times now, but it's continually getting better and more polished and more refined. And obviously, with the input from the community, it'll only improve as we do that early next year. So thank you so much for your hard work pulling all this together. And the process of it continually coming to us has been really great. Thank you. Cool. I'd like to move the motion then. All those in favour, please say aye. All those against? I declare that carried. Moving on to item number 6, which is on page 106 of our agenda, the proposed appeal on change 1 and variation 1 to the Wellington Regional Policy Statement. I'd like to ask Tim Johnson, our Head of Planning, to speak to the item.
Kia ora, councillors. Nothing, Tappy Take report is read and nothing to update. I will just stress the point that we're hopeful that through mediation, the majority, if not all of our points should be hopefully addressed without needing to go into the actual Environment Court proceeding. So that's our hope anyway.
Cool. Any questions? Councillor Mitchell.
Just in terms of that mediation you mentioned, Tim, there's mentioned in the paper that other councils, of course, have concerns as well. Is that mediation a joint thing between all of the councils, or is it something? So anyone who puts in a submission can, an appeal, can be part of that mediation. So yes, I would expect from our conversations that all of the Wellington councils will be part of that mediation. And were their concerns quite similar to other councils, or they have things unique to their? There's definitely some overlaps, but I would say other councils have some slightly different concerns. I think, for instance, Porirua are more interested in the greenfield side of things, whereas we don't rely on greenfield growth as much. So definitely some commonalities, but other councils do have some other priorities, which is why it is important that we do stay in the process and keep an eye on other appeal points so that we don't kind of lose sight of it, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Councillor Parkin.
So this is more of a graphic issue. With page 110 of our agenda, the high coastal tsunami hazard zone and the high coastal inundation overlay are incredibly difficult to tell apart in terms of colour scheme. I'm aware that this is probably a format that is consistent across the board, but is there any possibility of changing the colour scheme so it's more visibly identifiable as to which one's which?
I think this is following the National Planning Standards mapping. I'm going to look around behind me quickly. Look, we can take that away. I guess a couple of things to say. Good point. On this scale, when our E-plan is up and running, you will be able to drill right in and see these properties, and actually the tool itself, when you click on a property, will actually say what hazards apply. So hear what you're saying. We'll have a think about that, but I wouldn't put too much weight on this little plan in here. I think our E-plan will be far more advanced when it comes to the maps and what you can zoom in.
Fantastic. Sorry, I'd forgotten the fact that this was going to be an E-map and the ability to toggle eliminates that problem. If it was just a visual thing, then yes, I'd be more concerned. Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions from members? Deputy Miller.
Thank you, Tim. From the previous conversation with Lucy And if we take in consideration Allistown now, will that be highlighted on the map? I don't know what the conditions are there.
Yeah, so I'm pretty confident Allistown will be part a high hazard zone. So to your earlier point, there will be rules that limit development there, but also, for instance, there will be ways to apply for consent for higher density development. You know, it'll relate to your ground floor use and perhaps having non-habitable on your ground floor and then going 3 or 4 or 5 stories above that. So it's not a no, you can't build, but that would be managed through the district plan and resource consent process.
Cool. Any other questions? No. Cool. Thank you, Tim. I'd like to move that the committee approves the Hutt City Council appeal regarding proposed change 1 and variation 1 to the Wellington Regional Policy Statement and authorise officers to review the appeals lodged by other parties and determine whether council should register an interest in any of these appeals as a Section 274 party. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Lewis. Anyone wishing to debate? Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Yeah, I just want to thank the officers for this work. It must be pretty frustrating. You get down the track doing your own thing, and then you've got the Wellington Regional Council doing theirs as well. So to have to compensate and get all that balance right. So thank you for working on this.
Cool. Thank you. Great. I'll move the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. All against? I declare that carried. Moving on to page 146 of our agenda, an update on the Te Ao Māori chapters for the district plan review. I'd like to ask Crystal Bennett, our senior Tikanga Māori policy planner, and Nathan Gard, our policy planning manager, to speak to this item. Kia ora.
Kia ora, councillors. I'm happy for the report to be counted as read, but I just want to stress that largely these chapters are, come as a suite of 4 and have been largely informed by the Kāhui Manawhenua group. And for the marae zone, the existing marae groups, and the statutory iwi, which is the quarterly meetings there across these chapters as well. Kia ora.
Do any members have any questions? Councillor Shaw, then Councillor Mitchell.
Just a reference to page 150, and there's a paragraph there under marae zone, and it talks about Waifatu and Te Mangunu and Koranui being in a medium density residential area and all of that. My question is, where does Te Tātou Te Pō and Kokiri marae, are there special provisions for them being sited in basically industrial areas?
Yeah, in the existing operative plan, they are taken care of through the community iwi existing zone. In there, we use underlying zones for them. However, we're using a special purpose zoning now for them where we use district-wide zoning, and the special purpose zone will apply their own zoning rules to them instead of the underlying zones now.
Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you. I just had a question. It's on page 152 about the definition of papakainga, and there's a definition here that's been developed seemingly alongside the Kāhui Manawhenua, but is there not a generic RMA definition of a papakainga? Is that something that we're able to define separately?
That's a really good question, and one I asked myself and other organisations like Kainga Order and looked at other councils' definitions, and they were all quite different. So actually had a meeting with Hutt City Council, Wellington Regional Council over trying to standardise the papakainga definition across the region, to try and do that quite recently. And we found that although they were quite different, there was quite, some similarities where there was non-residential activities, residential activities, and communal activities. So Papakainga can include all of those things, as well as emergency services as well in times of need. So because they encapsulate all of that, it kind of becomes quite broad and general, but we still need to capture them as well to cover all of that so that all those cultural operations can be delivered.
And so the definition we have here is quite consistent now with those other parties that you mentioned?
Yes.
Any other questions? Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, just in relation to sites of significance to Māori, there's quite a bit of work done previously to identify those areas. Are they sort of all contained in this report? That work's been taken forward?
Yes, some extensive work carried out by Makahui and Richard himself there, who, and others like Murray Love, Liz Mellish and so forth, just to get a collaborative narrative and also some historic narrative in the Tangata Whenua chapter as well, captures some of that in an overall sense, gives a strategic direction. But yes, there's about 60 sites of significance and overall with small narratives that we're including in there, actually categorised, some where there's more certainty, category 1. Category 2 is where there's less certainty, but they're still important. Then category 3 where, you know, we're not too worried, there might be a accidental discovery protocol. And then awa are in their own category, and they're covered by maybe natural character, rivers, streams, and so forth, because there's quite rivers and streams quite important to tangata whenua in general, so they might sit outside, and they're all over the show, so they just sit outside of that. So that was an appropriate way to take that approach.
Any other questions? Great, thank you, officers. I'd like to move that the committee receives and notes the report and directs officers to complete the tangata whenua sites and areas of significance to Māori, Marae Zone and Papakainga chapters for inclusion in the proposed district plan coming back to us later this year. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mitchell. Any debate? Councillor Shaw.
Just as I was coming in, I was commenting with my colleague here, Richard Tierney, about how much progress has been made in this chapter. So I just want to thank you for the work there. And also, Richard, I believe you might have had something to do with all this chapter as well too. So luckily I had the right answer for him when we were coming up in the lift. Great work on the chapter, but well done.
Kia ora. Anyone else? Great, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. All against? Declare that carried. Kia ora, thank you. I'd like to move on to item number 8, which is on page 160 of our agenda, the District Plan Review Committee Forward Programme for 24 to 25. Just wondering if any members have any questions regarding the Forward Work Programme. It's pretty light compared to other committees at the moment, but we know why that is. So just as a bit of background at this stage, the plan is to keep all of our 2025 dates in the calendar because things will come up through the district plan, but obviously once the district plan goes out the door to commissioners, this committee won't be so involved with the district plan, but there'll still be the spatial plan. That's not called the spatial plan anymore. The sustainable growth strategy, in brackets, spatial plan, still ticking along, and no doubt there'll be more government submissions and MPSs and RMA reform changes to deal with. Councillor Mitchell.
I did just have a question in terms of timing, because the next meeting in December is when we're going to see the full plan, right? And it's going to be very big. And just in terms of timeframes, if there's any chance that we can see it more than the week before the meeting, if we can get any extra time with that document to kind of sit with it a bit longer. I know you've probably got your timelines all sorted out there, but what's
Yeah,
the-
maybe Tim, do you want to provide a bit of commentary about how it will come, and maybe a little bit about how it'll be structured as well? We talked about a bit about this at the pre-agenda meeting as well.
Yeah, I mean, when will the agenda come out? A week before, obviously, and so what you'd like to have is available before then as far as possible. Yeah, I think we can probably do something along those lines. I mean, we are going to be working up to the last minute getting everything, but yeah, I don't see why we can't make stuff available to you before then. There's lots of fantastic Section 32 reports that you'll want to read. So look, I think we can do something even, yeah, let's have a think about how we can get you information, maybe drip feeding through before just a week before. So yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, could you use your mic, Councillor Mitchell? Because I can't hear you, and Councillor Edwards and Councillor Parkin.
Sorry, I
definitely
said Councillor Dyer will book the whole week off anyway to make sure he's reading those materials fully.
I mean, in terms of the committee on the day, obviously, I think it's District Plan Review Committee, and then we go straight into full council meeting. So hopefully that's nice and tidy and quick. You'll all be tired because you'll have been up since 6 a.m, I believe, with the opening of Nine Eye Pool. So hopefully you're not grumpy and you're
No promises. And do you want to talk a bit about the structure of those papers? What's sort of being worked on? We talked a bit about sort of the decisions we've already made in one section, and that kind of just briefly.
I might ask Nathan to come up. He's the one that's writing the report. So yeah, yeah.
So the structure of the paper that we'll present on the 4th of December is it's largely going through, I guess, kind of reiterating what the purpose of the district plan is and what the legal requirements are of council for the district plan and the process that it needs to follow with the council's approval to notify. It will also include a summary of what is in the chapters of the district plan, of the proposed district plan, and it will highlight some of the key changes that have happened between the draft that the council released for engagement last year to now. So yeah, just kind of highlighting those big things. It's not highlighting every single change because there are a lot of kind of I guess more technical changes that are made, but some of those big ticket items that we would expect people to take an interest in when we notify it.
Any other questions? Great. I'd like to move that the committee receives and notes the forward work programme. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Briggs. All those in favour, please say aye. All against? Declare that carried. Item number 9, questions. I've received no questions, so we'll move on to item number 10, the closing formalities. Karakia. Mea karakia tātou. Unu here, unu here. Unu here e te uratapa nui. Kia wātia, kia mama, te nātou, te tinana, te wairua i te aratakatū. Koe rā e rongo, whakaahiaki ki runga, kia wātia, ai rā kua wātia, hau pai mārie. Thank you, everyone. I declare the meeting closed at 2:28 p.m.